My experience occurred in July of 2000, and I was in the hospital in labor with my daughter, and I was about 13 hours or so into labor, and it was an induced labor, and I'd only dilated it's like 3 centimeters. And Maggie started to show signs of distress. So I'm a trained PA, and the monitor was next to the bed, and I looked at it and I saw that her heart rate had dropped really low, and I knew that I was going to have a C-section. I knew that was coming immediately. So the nurse midwife came in and said, "We need to do an emergency C-section now." And I said, "Yes, I saw her heart rate drop." So she was putting what's called an internal monitor on my daughter's scalp, and we were trained, the baby doesn't feel it. It doesn't distress the baby, and it's to monitor their vital signs while, the laborers, while you're, between that point that they put it on and getting into the OR and undergoing the C-section, the emergency C-section, so they can keep tabs on the baby. So they put that on, and as soon as she was down there, putting the monitor on, I started to feel like fluttering in my chest. And I turned to my mother, who was sitting next to me, and I said, I'm having trouble breathing. And the nurses just like jumped into action. They pulled my mom out of the room, pulled me on my side, stuck oxygen on my face, and started to wheel me out of the room within seconds of this. And during those few seconds, I was having more and more difficulty getting air into my lungs. And as they wheeled me out of the doorway into the hallway, and then the OR was right there. And in the hallway, I took my last breath. It was like trying to suck air through a teeny tiny little straw. And as I was doing that, this peace just kind of came over me, and I was on my side, and it sort of came over me like this. And it was just this sense of just serene peace. And I lost my vision at that point. And then the next moment of awareness that I had was seeing my body, but I didn't know it was me, below. And I didn't know it was a body. I didn't know anything. I didn't have any names for anything that I was watching, but I was far above the body, and I was looking down, and I was sort of like to the right of the body. And I watched as little tiny black particles came racing up from the body and that surrounded my vision in like this sort of very loose, static kind of cloud. And I was looking at it, and I was just very neutral, curious, like, oh, this is interesting. And I didn't have any sense of anything that was going on because I didn't have any understanding of any of it. Like, I didn't have any labels for anything or human words to describe anything. And I just recall looking to my left, and there was a wallpaper border there. And I looked down, and I saw them deliver my daughter. The doctor was holding Maggie, and another doctor was coming in the room, and he stood there in the doorway for a moment. Then he stepped up to the edge of the bed, and then I floated around the other side. I saw them hand my daughter to somebody else that was at my right, behind my right shoulder, and she turned around with Maggie, so I couldn't see her. Her back was towards my vision, and I was just curious, like, oh, what's that? And as I went around to the other side, there was another person here on my left, and they were like threading something into my chest. And this feeling of curiosity was growing stronger and stronger. And as it grew stronger, I felt this desire to know more. And it was like the tip of the tongue phenomena, where you know a word, but you can't quite retrieve it. You can't quite remember it. And it was sort of like that feeling. And then I felt this tug on my left, like pull me, and I didn't want to go. So I resisted, and then it pulled harder. And I was like, okay, I guess you want me to go. I guess I need to go. So I just like relaxed and like, energetically said the equivalent of okay, because there was no words, thoughts, nothing. Everything was feeling in my NDE. And I started moving very fast to my left through the wall into this bright white out space just for like a second. And then I went kind of to the right a little bit, and I went through some sort of a vague opening and back into the same particulate matter that I was. I was like absorbed in this space, and I was moving just imperceptibly fast. And I turned to my left and I looked, and there was like the solid, like the particulate matter that was really dense. And then there'd be this like little area of liquidity where it was sort of like blackish, grayish, white, like liquidy. And then it would turn into the particles again. And again, I was just like, oh, this is interesting. Like I was like sort of neutral. I wasn't afraid. I didn't have any other fear or any other emotions except curiosity, interest. There was no fear. And I didn't have any thoughts. It was just the energy that I was feeling emotions. And then all of a sudden I stopped, and there was this very quick, rapid download of information, sort of like a funnel. And it went, and it stopped, and it was this one little point in front of me of energy, and it was love. And it felt like all the questions I'd ever had in my existence were answered in that download. And every answer boiled down when you broke it down to its element. It was love, was the answer. And I felt once I experienced that, it was like I was that love. I was this bliss, and everything was bliss. And it went out infinitely, eternally. There's no words to describe. It's just never ending. Because there was no time there. Words that point to time don't adequately describe it. It's like I think there's like a Vedic saying or a Hindu saying, no tongue has soiled it. Like the ultimate I am, the ultimate sort of creational energy is indescribable with human words. And that's how it felt in there. And so I had this experience of, being just infinite love, expansive, connected to absolutely everything. And off to my right, there was this little white speck of light, and I felt it sort of calling me. It like wanted me to come to it, and I chose to go that way. So I started moving in that direction. And as I got closer, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was this sort of round, like cloudy gray space. And there were shadow beings there in the opening. And there was a shadow being of a little boy in the front. And then he had adults behind him, and he needed my help. So again, it was like I had the choice to go and or not to go. I could have chosen not to. But I wanted to help, and I went in to the space, and they sort of fanned out to my left in like a half circle. And I was in what felt like the middle of that space. And I looked around, I didn't see the little boy. And then I felt they all needed my help. And I felt back, I'll help you. So then they started to sort of dart at me and dart away and dart at me and dart away from different directions. And what I realized was that they were taking my energy. So I was sort of like getting smaller in that space. And when I realized that what was going on, and I felt myself getting like diminishing, I just felt, well, no, I don't want that. And as soon as I felt that, I was pulled out of there and back into the dense particles that I was. And then I went through another less distinct opening and into this beautiful landscape. It was just completely gorgeous, green rolling hills and rocky moss-covered waterfall on my left and an evergreen forest on my right and blue sky. And trees dotted the hills in the distance, and there were yellow flowers, this huge field of yellow flowers. And when I entered that space, I just merged immediately with all of it. I was the flowers and the trees and the sky and the water and the rocks and everything. And it was completely beautiful and blissful. And I could have existed there eternally and been completely happy and content. And like, yeah, it would have been perfect. And then I was flanked on both sides by very tall, thin beings that were drapey, like beige colored sort of garments. But they didn't have any distinct faces. They were humanoid, again, humanoid. And they communicated through feeling, and they communicated, you can stay here, you can go to what comes next, or you can go back. And I didn't know what came next. I had a sense that it wasn't something that I was necessarily, that I wanted to do right now, kind of thing. Like, it's like, no, that's not really for me right now. And I could have stayed there, and I very briefly like contemplated staying there, but I chose to go back. And at the time I didn't have any memory of being human. I didn't have a memory, because I didn't have any memory of being human. I didn't recall that I was pregnant with my daughter. I didn't recall anything about my human life, but I was still, in my consciousness, I was still Krista. I was still me, but without all of the attachments, all the memories of being human, just my pure consciousness. And so I decided, yeah, I want to go back. So immediately, as soon as I felt that back to them, I started moving backwards, and they turned in the opening, they turned and they communicated, if you go back, you need to share what you learned here. And I said, okay. And then the next thing I remember was feeling pain in my chest. And then some sort of like dreamy music. And what I found out was a good friend had put headphones on me. I was in the ICU, and she was playing my wedding song that my now ex-husband and I had danced to at our wedding. And so they were trying to like bring me back in the hospital. But what had happened was I had an amniotic fluid embolism, and what it does is amniotic fluid got into my bloodstream. My body saw it as foreign. It created these little microclots that circulated back to my lungs, blocked off my lungs, the vasculature. So that's why I couldn't breathe. And that stopped my heart. So that was 8 minutes. They documented. I didn't, they coded me for 8 minutes. They did not do compressions for about 2 minutes while they were delivering my daughter by emergency C-section. And then once they got the bleeding under control, because then I was bleeding excessively, which is what happens in some patients with amniotic fluid embolism. They go into what's called disseminated intravascular coagulation, which is uncontrolled bleeding. So I was in the ICU, intubated, and they induced a coma medically with medication to help my body heal and to recover from the trauma of the delivery and the resuscitation. So the chances of me surviving that were very slim. The two together, amniotic fluid embolism and then a DIC, was like, I've had multiple colleagues, because that was right after I graduated PA school. And then I went on to work for 25 years as a PA, and I worked in the emergency room for many years. And I had colleagues say to me, like, you shouldn't be here. You really like shouldn't be here. And it's funny to me, because my experience was of this beautiful, blissful, amazing journey that my consciousness went on, but I experienced it. It was like hyper real. It's more real than any of this here on earth. Like, this is the dream world. Where we transition to is reality, where we're just infinitely powerful, and our creational ability is like at the max, and it's like the perfect place to be for us. And here is sort of like a really dulled version of that, but we can create a heightened version if we choose to, you know. But yeah, so that was my NDE itself. I was very scientific focused, like science brain. Um, and the only thing that I could recall learning about was I think her name's Beverly or Betsy Eady, Beverly Eady. She was on an Oprah show. This was in the 1980s when I was in high school. And I had seen her and I thought to myself, well, that's interesting. And then I thought, she's probably crazy. You know, like I didn't believe it, really. But I had been brought up Catholic. So I had a sense of like the mystical in that. But I had rejected the Catholic faith when I was about 15. And I had been more what you would call spiritual. I got sober when I was 22, 24, 22, then 24. So I was part of a 12-step program. So I had like that spirituality. But I didn't have any sort of like near-death experiences were not on my radar at all. Yeah, I had just finished my PA training, so I was like totally science oriented, science brain. Yeah, concrete thinking. Well, when I got home, well, it took me about 6 days in the hospital to sort of get to the point where they were ready to discharge me. And I didn't have a recall of it yet. Although I was, in retrospect, I was exhibiting a lot of the same, like the things that people who have NDEs exhibit. One interesting part of it was that because in my NDE, communication was all through feeling, I made the assumption after I recovered that everyone knew what I was feeling, what I was thinking, so I didn't have to communicate because they knew. And I hadn't, recovered enough to realize, like, well, first of all, that I'd had an NDE because that came later. But that, like that wasn't the case. And so all the video, because there was video taken, and all the video, I have this sort of blank expression when there was so much going on inside me, because they handed me my daughter for the first time at 6 days after I'd had her. And, they were looking for some sort of a new mother reaction kind of thing. And I didn't show it, but inside there was like just love and recognition. Like I felt like I already knew her and that this was just like we were reuniting almost. So I got home and my recovery, because I had had 8 minutes without oxygen to my brain, or at least adequate oxygen to my brain, I had cognitive issues. So my memory was not very good. My decision making was fundamentally good. Like I could keep myself safe. I took care of my daughter, like just by instinct. And I knew what she needed. Like it was like this deep connection. But like I couldn't get in the car and drive somewhere because I didn't remember where anything was. So I had to be very careful. And my mother was around, so she because she came from out of town, she stayed for a little while and made sure I was okay before she left. And my ex-husband he had to go right back to work. There was he was a touring musician and they were in the middle of making a record at the time. So he had to get back in the studio, and it was like this kind of chaotic thing with regard to him and us having a new baby. And then what happened to me, like all of that wasn't planned. So, he thought he could just go right back to work. And so it was really interesting. My NDE came to me during sleep, and that was several months later. And it was like a dream state where it was all given to me, and it was as if I was there experiencing it. And I woke up in the morning and I'm like, oh my God, like I was completely different and transformed. And I yelled for my husband at the time. And he came in and I told him like what I had experienced. And he's like, well, that's amazing, but I'm just really glad you're okay. Like that's all any of us really care about, is that you're still alive and you're okay. Like you're not brain dead, like they told us you might be. So, but inside I was like, I needed to share this. It was like the best thing ever that had happened. And like I just wanted to scream from the hilltops about it. So to have like this kind of reaction, it was sort of a letdown, and it, so I started to question it then, and my science brain kicks in and I'm like, you know what, you better just go do research. So I hop online. This is 2000, so it was a lot different back then. And I just put in like afterlife studies and like medical emergency afterlife experience, and like just trying to figure out, I didn't have near death experience in my vocabulary. So, and I was looking for like what I thought would be credible sources of information, which means other scientists, right, talking about this. So that's the validation that I needed at the time. So I found Dr. Jeff Long and his site, his near-death experience research that he does with his wife. And so I emailed him, and he sent me back an email like within a day or two that was so validating and so kind. And because I had been very vague in my email, and because I didn't even want to disclose to him, I felt like I felt like I didn't want to be judged. And he said, pay attention in the email. He said, and I didn't tell him that this came to me during sleep. He's like, pay attention to your dreams. And so when he said that, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is real. Like this is real. And I couldn't deny the fact that I was so fundamentally transformed as a person after having this given back to me, this experience. So yeah, but then, the ego comes in and the battle and and the like, again, science is concrete, and this was not something that was well studied. And I'm like, but it happened, like there was this battle that was constantly going on. And I didn't want to be a PA anymore. Like I had been all about being a PA for years. And I woke up after having my daughter, and I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do that. So I was literally head to toe transformed. And so it took years for me to integrate my experience, live my life, do all the things, years and years. And then finally, I made the choice that I was going to like really focus on integrating my NDE. So that's what I did for about 4 years. I really, really focused on just like healing my soul in this body, in this 3D world that we live in. Because I had this perception of perfection, of love. And I was told, you need to share what you learned here. And it's like, how do I share that perfect love in this very flawed existence? Well, that's the way I saw it anyway. And how do I overcome ego and all this stuff? Like, it was just this, I went on this hero's journey for years and years, and sort of came out, well, as I am now. But I did write about my experience, but I also wrote about what helped heal me in the process of this. And it's called I Died and Learned How to Live. And I talk about 12 principles that sort of fundamental states of being that I put myself in, would like shift into, and as the situation called for it. And it really helped me to heal my life, to integrate my experience and live my truth from that. And so that's where I've been the last 15, 20 years. The first person I told was my ex-husband. And then I believe I told my mom, and she had pretty much the same reaction. And then I stopped talking about it, because I thought it didn't, I told myself it didn't happen, because I needed validation. Like I was questioning everything. And I couldn't deny the fact of like how much it had transformed me, like holistically. And here I was in a, like, married, in a profession, in a life that I didn't quite fit in anymore. And it was a lot. It was a lot to try to kind of deal with. And I was still recovering from a very severe brain injury from lack of oxygen to my brains. And I was a new PA. It's like I went to work. You know, I had to work. I had to take care of my daughter and live life and, you know, do all the things. And it was overwhelming. Yeah. So I just forgot about it. Oh, I tried to. Wouldn't let me, but I tried to. It would come into my consciousness. I think about it and I push it away. Think about it, push it away. Yeah. Because I had to go to the grocery store. I had to vacuum the house. I had to change my daughter's diaper. You know, I had to focus on my life. But it never let me quite focus on my life. It was always there. I'm like a Gen Xer. I grew up, you know, in the 70s and 80s, very independent, took care of myself, you know, like my parents were around, but it was they had the mindset back then of like, you know, like you take care of it yourself, like whatever. They were there if you absolutely need them, but otherwise you take care of it yourself. So I was very self-sufficient, independent, and very driven. And I got my bachelor's degree in psychology and worked in human services and counseling with teenagers and mentally ill adults and stuff for a while. And then I went back to school to become a PA, and got in and finished. And I was married and got pregnant with my daughter my second year of PA school. And graduated, you know, 3 weeks before I delivered her. So, but I was all about being a PA. Like I knew all the minutia about medicine, and I was going to be like this amazing provider, and I couldn't wait to be a PA. I loved helping people. I still do, but it was like, that's what I wanted to do. And I wanted to have it all. You know, I wanted to have a baby, and we planned on having more children. So to go from that to completely like the opposite was staggering, really. But it takes time to integrate an experience that has shown you a way of being, that is possible. But like for me, I was here and it was like way up here. And I had to bridge that with basically with my life and the learning and the journey and the transformation that occurred along that path. You know, it made me, it made me into, I feel like, a more grounded person. I'm not afraid of dying. I really hope that it happens in a non-traumatic way. Although for me, I didn't remember the suffering, you know, like it's going to happen the way it happens. But I don't fear death because it's a transition. It's not like it's the complete end of existence. I know that. And so I also know that I have free will here to choose my life. and I'm actively choosing my life every day. When I transitioned, I had free will there to choose. So, and I keep like gesturing to up here, but it's really just like walking through a door. It's going from one room into another. It's as my husband puts it, it's the in and the out breath. It's just so natural to transition. I don't recommend doing it because you feel like you don't want to live anymore. Because in my understanding, if we cut our lives short here, we do come back and we get a do-over, because this is Earth School. And if we truncate our sort of soul choices, then the soul choices don't disappear. They remain, and they just, we enter in another form. But that's just my sort of 2 cents about those who contemplate taking their own lives. Listening to people who talk about the beauty of the afterlife. It's not that simple, I guess. But at the same time, there are no mistakes. So, that's why we have free will and we get to choose. I feel like I fell in love with humanity even more. I know that the potential for good is in everyone, whether they're conscious of it or not. It doesn't excuse behaviors that people choose that are harmful to themselves or others. And those are, there's consequences for that. However, the individual causing the destructive or harmful behavior is just as divine in their essence, as I am, as you are, as anybody else is. That's something that, I was probably more judgmental with regard to those sorts of things before. But I see myself on the same playing field as everybody else. Doesn't matter who you are. And my capacity for love is so much bigger, so much stronger. Even though I do get angry, I do get mad. I do get frustrated at injustices, things I perceive as injustices, it's because of the suffering that they cause. The suffering is something that is so unnecessary, and is such a human condition that we create here. And it's so unnecessary. We could create heaven on earth so easily if we would just choose it. I wish everyone knew how powerfully their creational ability was. I wish that we could all recognize, man, just how amazing we are in this human form. How just amazing beings we are. And we have such a tremendous capacity to create heaven on earth. And if we can not focus on ego stuff, to turn our attention to love and compassion and kindness and caring while honoring ourselves, not always giving, not being a constant people pleaser, not like that. It's being solid within oneself and then being able to generate that love, kindness, compassion, caring from that solid warrior, love warrior that we all have the capacity to be. Well, from as much as I possibly can, as much as my own awareness will allow, I come from a place of loving kindness. And I'm feeling that in my entire body. Like I I call myself a servant. I'm a servant of this life, but I serve me first. And that's the difference. Like that's what the shadow beings taught me. They taught me that I can choose me first and I can serve from a full cup, but I have to serve me first. Living in fear does not serve you or the world or the universe. So whatever sparks or stimulates or creates fear in you, turn your attention back to love. If you need to turn your attention from your phone, from your TV, from a conversation, because that feeling in your body is there of fear, anxiety, whatever, then that's the trigger to remember, no, love is where I'm more powerful being. And then just do what you can to shift it. Well, for me, my experience was from my understanding, I created and co-created my death experience, but there really is no death because we just transition. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. It just changes form. So there really is no death of the soul. The body, yes, that falls away. But our body's energy, as in my NDE, it showed me what happens. That energy exits the body and remains as consciousness, and we continue on our journey. So that's, again, my experience, and that I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid of that. So that really helps me to live better, live more fuller in my life. Oh, well, that's what, initially brought my husband and I like together as friends. Like we were part of a group online because he's from the UK. And then just over time, circumstances were that we came together as a couple. And it's amazing because like we just have an innate understanding of the other, like with regard to all of this. So I don't have to even, I don't have to explain myself and like, like, oh, because of this, blah, 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 he gets it. He just gets it. I'm on Instagram, and it's my name, Krista Gorman. And people are welcome to message me there, connect with me there. I do have a few videos on my Instagram of like NDE stuff. I think I did some readings. It's been a while since I posted, but I've done some readings of my book, I Died and Learned How to Live. So they're on there. But that's really the main place. In around like 2013, I decided that part of my process of like integrating my experience and everything, I wanted to write what helped heal me in my life, because that's like, once I started to integrate my NDE, I really began my life just got better. It wasn't completely better. It was a little bit rough, but even in the roughness, it was really good. But my NDE, it incorporated what's called the law of attraction, where like I wanted something or I had a feeling like, oh no, like I didn't want to be there anymore. So I was, with the universe's help, I was taken away, like that was a field of no resistance. That space I was in, that realm I was in. So like the law of attraction is a real thing. Loving detachment, like practicing loving detachment, loving without attaching yourself to it. Ego. It's like egoless love, So that was also part of my NDE. So my book has those, like that energy in it, in the 12 principles, like keeping those things in mind when practicing the 12 principles. But I give my NDE story briefly in the beginning because I didn't want the book to be all about my NDE. That wasn't the point. The point of it was to share the 12 principles and to give folks who didn't have or don't have like a sort of a blueprint or a map or like something to follow in their life that they can begin to make their life better if they're not happy, happy within themselves. And it also just fosters connection with other people. Like things just get clearer, less resistance. I noticed when I was practicing the 12 principles and law of attraction and all of that, being detached, like lovingly detached from people. I worked in an emergency room, it was really busy. And I had a lot of ego people around me. And I had to talk to them and like on the phone and tell them about patients and like call consults and stuff. And there's a lot of ego in medicine. And I wasn't about that. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. So I just energetically removed myself from that and just had my bubble of energy, and I would be in there and I would be feeling good and I'd be like lovingly detached and like, intending for a great day, intending for a great phone call with this cardiologist. And it was so amazing how much easier my conversations were with people. Just from patients to consults. It was like everything improved. And it was so amazing. Like I was so grateful because that was a part of my life I really needed to heal too. So yeah, so the 12 principles really were my savior in my profession for a while.